Hi everyone. Today we're going to do a Dice app based on the Dicey app from App Brewery. Again, great class for Swift UI and Swift. It's a little outdated, but the concepts and the principles you learn are applicable to today and other programming languages. But at a high level, we're going to take the Dicey app that was created from that course, and we added some animation, and we'll be able to load the dice so that you get some high numbers every time you roll. All right. So first, you roll the dice. You can see that got some animation, kind of makes it look like the dice is spinning around. Really, just wanted to show the animation effect in SwiftUI as well as some of the rotation effects and things like that. And then down here, kind of as an invisible rectangle, if you tap it, you'll notice it says dice loaded. And now all my rolls are either going to be 5 or 6. So we roll, it's a 5 or a 6, and then you hand it to your friend. They roll, they're going to get a low number again. You secretly tap this area and then tap this area, and now your dice is loaded again. You kind of win every single time. So that's really what we're going to do today. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started. And what we'll do, like I mentioned earlier, is we're going to clone this GitHub App Brewery repository, this Dicey app or this Roll Dice app, and we're going to make it animated, and we're going to kind of load the dice. So let's get into Xcode. So I'm not going to fork this project. Typically, you fork something if you were planning to contribute back to the main repository, but because this has been completed, there's no reason why Angela would ever make any more changes to it. I'm just going to go ahead and clone it. So get into Xcode, and we're going to clone existing project. And if you don't have this screen because you've unchecked this box, it's under source control as well, and you can clone the repository. All right, so we're going to clone an existing project. Go ahead and paste this in here, the URL, and I'll put this URL in the description below. Click on clone, wait for it to clone, and then put it in whatever directory you want. I like to put everything in my app dev directory. And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call it, let's call it loaded Dicey SwiftUI completed. SwiftUI, all right? So go ahead and clone it. All right, and there we go. Now we have our application here. It is probably loading things up and initializing processing files on my machine. And I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so we can kind of take a look at what we have here. So again, this is in SwiftUI, so let's take a look at this content view, and it'll bring up the preview. Let's see what it looks like. All right, so while it's rendering, I'm going to just fix my workspace here, and we're just going to dive right into it. All right, so the first thing is we want to, let's do some animation. So right now, when you run the app, and we're going to go ahead and run it, it just typically, when you click on roll, it will just update these numbers. And I'm going to go ahead and just build it real quick just to make sure everything is running. So it's going to attach, and then hopefully my simulator is up and running. And we'll just take a look at what happens when I click on roll. And click on roll, and you'll see that the numbers just kind of come up. All right, so nice typical Dicey app, but it'd be nice if we could get some animation in here. And my thought, we're gonna load the dice as well when you click on an area, a secret area on the app. All right, so let's get started. So we have our state variables up there, which is great. And we are going to go ahead and add some rotation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a variable called, a state variable called isRotated. And the idea behind this variable is when it gets triggered from false to true, it will activate some of the animations and rotating pieces that we are doing. So let's go ahead and go down here. So what we're going to do is we are going to rotate the dice when we click on it. So what we want to do here is we're going to have to create a, in the dice view, we're going to go down to the dice view right here, and we are going to add some rotation effects. So let's do this. We'll do a rotation effect. So there's two of them, and we'll actually do both of them. So we'll do one at a time so you can kind of see what each of them does. So rotation effect, and if I put a angle here, so if I do something like angle degrees negative 45 and finish the parentheses, you'll see that when this renders, and we'll have it render again, that it will basically turn these dice to about 45 degrees. All right. So what we're going to do is we are going to actually add a rotation effect and a 3D effect as well. So if my content view loads, you can kind of see the, let me stop that. You can kind of see what it does. So again, this computer is a little slow, so sometimes it does take time to load. So let's go ahead and, you know what, why don't we just run it? Ah, there it goes. So you kind of see how it rotates at 45 degrees. But what I kind of want to do is have it spin, so it kind of looks like the dice is rolling, right? So what we're going to do is we are going to say that the rotation effect angle will say if is rotated, when we trigger this is rotated, right, I want to rotate it 1800 degrees. All right. If not, it should stay at 0, so it will be kind of flat. All right. So it's going to complain because is rotated is up here. It's a state variable up here. So we'll bring down this binding variable as well. So we'll say binding var is rotated. So we can pass this into our struct right here. Right. So up here, it's going to complain, of course, that we're missing arguments. So the first one is n, this integer. Second one is rotated. So we'll do a comma. And here we are going to have to do, and let's see if I can just get them to come up. If I do a comma, is rotated. There we go. And we will pass also the variable is rotated. Like that. All right. And then we'll do the same thing here. Is rotated, is rotated. So we're basically passing this value into is rotated, and it may not like this. Let me see if it will complete the thing. Oh, you know what, I'm doing wrong. It's a binding variable. Okay, so I have to use a wrapper instead. So it can't convert the value is rotated type boolean to expected type binding boolean. So we can fix it by just adding that little insert in there, that little $sign in there, and then this should be okay. So I can now pull it down here. In addition to the rotation effect, I do want to animate it a little bit. So let's do a little animation. Dot animation, and the animation value is we're going to do an animation ease out. Oops, animation. We'll ease out, maybe ease in and out. Well, we'll do it ease out. So let's read what this says. Oh, it doesn't have a description. And then we want a duration in a double. And this is about the number of seconds. So we'll do 2 seconds. And we will only trigger it if the value of is rotated is true. All right. So the idea is that when is rotated triggers from false to true, it will do this animation effect. So the only thing we have to do now is within our button press, we want to toggle the is rotated. So we'll just say is rotated, toggle, and that just switches it from false to true. Let's see what we have so far. All right, so if I hit roll, you see how it spins, right? So that's kind of neat, right? We kind of have a little 3D effect of making it like roll. Pretty much, pretty close. The other effect we can now add is a is a 3D effect. So now we kind of going to have it rotate in front of us as well. So this is called rotation. Again, 3D effect. So this rotates the view's rendered output in 3 dimensionals around a given axis of rotation. All right, and so you're going to have to give the axis in an X, Y, Z format. And X is along the horizontal, Y is the vertical, and Z, of course, is depth. So what we'll do is we'll do a rotation 3D effect, and same thing, we're going to do angle degrees, and we're going to make it the same thing down here. So is rotated. If is rotated is true, we're going to rotate it 1800 times around. 1800 degrees of an angle. If not, we want it to stay put. And the axis, we'll just make it. Let's do around the x-axis and see what this looks like. And I definitely encourage you to play with this and see what happens when you change the axes around and what things look like. So we'll just do everything around the x-axis. And let's take a look at what this looks like. Go ahead and build it. Building succeeded. Let's roll it. All right, so now we got the spinny and kind of like a 3D little effect. And that's really all I wanted to show you for the animation. Very straightforward. Just gives it a little bit more animation and color. If you change the duration, it'll take a little bit longer to rotate it. If you change this to another number, it will also rotate more times over the course of the duration. Try playing with it. See what happens if you don't put in a number that ends up in 360 degrees. You'll see that the dice kind of stops, a little bit crooked. So that's really it for kind of animation. Second part I wanted to do is loading the dice. So I'm thinking that below the roll, we're going to kind of put a little bit of a bar, and I'll make it big just to exaggerate it right now. But that way we can go ahead and tap that, and when we tap that, we're going to load the dice a little bit, so to speak. All right. So let's go ahead and over here within this V stack. So we have Dicey logo, the die, spacer, some dice. Dice. We actually put another spacer in here, and then we have this roll button. And so right below all of this, let's go ahead and add a rectangle. And the idea behind this rectangle is we'll make it a frame. We'll just make it have a height of 100. We're just gonna, and on tap gesture, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say that we're going to basically load the dice. And the way we're gonna do this is on the, once it clicks, we're gonna quote unquote load the dice, and then you roll it, and then it'll unload the dice or make the dice fair again. All right, so it's going to be this black area right here, and let's just make it a little bit more. Well, we can leave it like this. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll print load the dice. Okay, or say dice loaded. Let's do that. Dice loaded. All right, so let's run this and see what happens. Build is successful. So if we roll, it's a normal roll, right? And then if we tap here, dice loaded. All right, so that's so far so good. So when we load the dice, what we want to do is let's change a variable, load dice, or dice loaded. Let's just do dice loaded. Dice loaded equals true. All right, so now we have the dice that's loaded, and of course it's going to complain because it's not a variable up here. So let's add a state variable. What do I call it? Dice loaded equals false. So when we load up the program, everything is fair. All right, and so dice loaded is true. And what will happen is when we get to this H stack, we're gonna make it quite simple. When we get to this button, we'll make it quite simple. Instead of these numbers being random, if dice loaded. All right, so let's dice loaded. Let's do copy and paste these two lines in, and let's make it, I always want high numbers, so instead of 1 to 6, we are going to make it 5 to 6, all right? So no matter what, I'm getting a high number now. Then I'll probably do another app similar to this with a D&D, a D20 roll or something like that, just for fun. And then if that doesn't work, else. I'm sorry, if the dice are not loaded, then let's make them fair, right? So here we go. So then if the dice are not loaded, it's going to be a regular 1 to 6. So now let's take a look. Run this. Build succeeds. All right, so we have this black area. If we load the dice loaded, roll, we expect, 5 and 6 high numbers. And then we hand it to our friend. They roll. It's, this is still pretty high. Let's make sure that it's fair. And it's not. So I did something wrong. So what I didn't do is I didn't unload the dice, right? So after we toggle the rotation, we should unload the dice, right? There we go. And let's test this again. All right, so we load the dice, roll, we get a high number. Should be false now. We'll roll again. Should get a couple random numbers. Yep, double 4s, 2 and a 6. My turn to go. Load the dice. Some nice high numbers. I hand it to my friend. They roll the dice. Not so high. Now this black bar is pretty obvious here, right? So what we can do is we can actually drop the opacity of this rectangle. Now if you drop it to 0, so if you make it 0, you can't click on it, but you can do something like this. Make it just such a small number that it looks clear on the screen. So let's load it up. Can't see the bar anymore. It doesn't look like anything's wrong there, but when you're using the app, go ahead and just touch this area and then go ahead and roll the dice. Hand it to your friend, they roll the dice. And so that's really it. I'll go ahead and check this in on GitHub. Let me know if you have any questions.